All right, and we're going to continue our conversation about parallel lines. And what we're going to focus on today is moving into a geometric interpretation of parallel lines and what that might mean versus the algebraic interpretation we've been working on for the past few lessons. So as you can see, standard 7.1, I can identify angle pairs formed when a transversal intersects two or more lines. And so what we're going to work on in this lesson, identifying special relationships, I'm sorry, I should say that again, identifying special angle pairs so that we can eventually identify some special relationships that might occur when we have parallel lines. So here's what I would like you to do, all right? So you have an opener here, parts A to F. So what I would like you to do is pause the video, all right? Use figure 1, and I said diagram 2 instead of figure 2 here, but use figure 1 and diagram 2 to answer questions A through F. Then turn the video back on and we'll see how you did. All right, so hopefully this seemed familiar to you. This should be hopefully review questions for you. So when you look at 1 and 4 here, hopefully you said that they were vertical angles, all right, and we know all vertical angles are congruent, all right, or equal. So when you look at 6 and 8 in diagram 2 down here, hopefully you said that was a linear pair, all right, and we definitely know that all linear pairs are supplementary. And then 3 and 4, all right, are also a linear pair, so we know that those are supplementary. And then once again, we get back down to diagram 2, 5 and 8 here are vertical, which means they are congruent. And so then when you get to E, if you knew the measure of angle 1, could you find the measure of all 3 angles in figure 1? All right, how, and provide an example. So I'm just going to make this really simple here. I'm just going to make this 60 degrees. Well, if 1 is 60, we know 4 has to be 60 because they're vertical, therefore they're equal. And then we know these 2 angles are a linear pair, these 2 angles are a linear pair, so we know they're all supplementary when we look at the different linear pairs that we have around figure 1. So that means that this would be 120 degrees and this would be 120 degrees. All right, so there's an example of that. If we knew measure 7, could you find the measure of the other 3 angles? Very similar fashion, right? So let's say this is 110, right? We would know 6 has to be 110 because it's also vertical, right? And then we know these are supplementary because they're a linear pair. They're 70, they're vertical, that's 70, or you could have said 7 and 8 were a linear pair and they're supplementary. So lots of ways to get to those answers. All right, so hopefully you felt really confident, all right, with everything on this page. So let's turn and look at the next page here. All right. Okay, now what if we had those 2 pictures merged into one here? So we take diagram 3 here. So notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4 like we just had, and then there's 5, 6, 7, 8 here. All right. So would any of our thoughts and answers be different, all right, from before? And I'll let you just pause the video, all right, flip it back on and let me know what you think. All right, and the answer would be no, right? So the relationships in this cluster of angles and the relationship in this clusters of angles didn't change. So the things that we just talked about that you just figured out in the example, or assuming the opener, would be all the same, right? So this would just be all the same stuff. All right, so now, if you are told that a transversal is a line that intersects 2 or more lines, which of the 3 lines above would be considered a transversal? All right, we gave you a little bit of a hint here because we also named this line T. So this would be our transversal. So a transversal is a line that intersects, all right, and we kind of give you the definition right here, right? Okay, definition is a line that intersects 2 or more lines. And that's going to be key because a lot of the angle relationships and the angle pairs that we're going to identify in this unit, all right, are going to be tied to the transversal that we're talking about. All right, so once again, a transversal is a line that intersects 2 or more lines. Okay, so I'll let you write that down, all right, pause the video if you need to, but then let's go ahead and look at, all right, number 1 here. All right, okay, so highlight the transversal or transversals for lines B and C. So when I look at B and C, all right, here's B and here's C, and a transversal means it would hit both of those lines. All right, and so I see one here. So this line E would be a transversal for B and C. It hits both of those. Hopefully you see a second one here, which would be line A, which also hits B and C. So we have 2 transversals there. All right, okay. Hopefully, all right, you can see that, all right? So those are the 2 lines that hit B and C. All right, so now let's look at number 2. Highlight the transversal or transversals for lines A and E. So here's A and E, all right? So what hits A and E. So we have this right here. All right. So if I look, right, B hits A and E right there. So B would be a transversal for A and E. All right, then I look right here, C hits A and E. So that would be a transversal. And then when I get down here, and I ran out of highlighters here. Let me see if I have another one here. All right, there's my blue one. All right, and then we can see that D, all right, hits A and E there. So for lines A and E, there are 3 transversals. All right, so what I would like you to do now is I would like you to try to do 3 and 4. All right, so if you don't have a highlighter, grab a highlighter. I should have said that before we started this part, but pause the video. All right, highlight the transversals for B and E and 3, and then highlight the transversals for, all right, C and D and number 4, and then we'll see how you did. All right, so in number 3, we only get A as the transversal hits B and E. Now, if we extended the picture, we might get some more intersections, but we're basing it on just what we see, all right, in our picture here. So only A is the line that hits both B and E in this photo, or in this diagram. Now, if we look at 4 for C and D, A hits C and then D, and then E hits C and then D there. So we get 2 different transversals we could highlight for those lines. All right, so hopefully you feel good with what a transversal is and how to identify that. So now let's look at angles, all right, and angle pairs that are formed with, all right, lines, all right, and transversals. So now let's go back to our figure 3 here, all right, and I'm going to highlight our transversal here, which is line T. I'm going to highlight that. That hits both M and N here. And then here's what I want you to do is to pause the video and answer questions 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you're going to look at each, all right, problem. You're going to look at the 4 angles given, and you're going to try to find what they have in common, all right? And there's some specific things we're looking for. So you might have something that's in common, all right, that I don't mention in a second, but I'm going to point out the important piece that we want you to know. So go ahead and pause the video, flip it back on, and let's talk about those things. All right. Okay, so now let's look at 1, 3, 5, and 7. So can you see that 1, 3, 5, and 7, all right, are all on the same side of the transversal, all right? So these are all on the same side of the transversal. In the same way that 2, 4, 6, and 8 are all on the same side of that transversal, all right, of the transversal. All right, so those, all right, 1, 3, 5, 7 are on the same side, and then 2, 4, 6, 8 are on the same side. Now let's look at 3, 4, 5, and 6. When I look at 3, 4, 5, and 6, those are inside of the 2 lines that are intersected by the transversal, versus 1, 2, 4, or excuse me, 1, 2, 7, and 8, which are on the outside of the lines that are intersected. So these are inside the intersected lines, and these are outside the intersected lines. All right, and that's going to be important, okay? Now, let's think about that. So we have angles that are on the same side of the transversal, all right? We have angles that are inside of the intersected line, and we have angles that are on the outside of the intersected lines. So now, here's what I want you to do is, once again, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to answer question 9 and question 10. So now look at 2 and 8, all right? And see if you can find something in common with 2 and 8 based on what we just talked about there. And then find 2 and 7. And what are some of the similarities and difference between those 2 pairs of angles? And then do the same thing for angles 4 and 6 and 10 and 4 and 5 and 10. All right, so pause the video, write down your thoughts, and then let's flip it back on and see what connections you made. All right, so now when I look at 2 and 8, all right, so when I look at 2 and 8, they have the fact that they are both on the same side of the transversal, and they are both on the outside of the intersected line. So 2 and 8 are on the same side of the transversal and outside the intersected lines. All right, so 2 and 8, same side on the transversal, but they're outside the intersected lines. Versus, let's look at 2 and 7. Now 2 and 7, all right, they're both on the outside of the intersection lines, but notice now, They're on opposite sides or alternate sides of the transversal. So they're both on the outside, all right, but they're on opposite sides of the transversal. But they are both still on the outside of the intersected lines. All right, now let's take a look at 10. All right, and see how you did here. So we have angle 4 and 6, and we have angle 4 and 5. All right, so once again, when we look at 4 and 6, so 4 and 6 are on the same side, and they're both interior. All right, so they're both on the same side of the transversal, and they're both inside the intersected lines. Now, let's take a look at 4 and 5. All right, so once again, 4 is here, 5 is here. Now notice they're both still on the inside of our lines, right? They're inside the intersect lines, but now once again, they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So they're on opposite sides. Versal, there we go. But they're still inside the intersected lines. All right. So there is definitely some patterns to these angle pairs around the transversal, and that's what we want to get into now. So now let's flip and take some notes on page 48. All right, and I'm just going to highlight, say, our transversal, all right, and all of these. So we're going to talk about interior and exterior angles of our two lines, all right, and then we're going to talk about alternate or same side of the transversal. So let's just do that, right? Okay, and I'm just going to highlight that all the way down. So this blue line is our transversal, all right here. Okay. All right, so interior angles, all right, and we kind of hit this when we just went through, all right, so we have interior angles, and we have exterior angles. And when we're saying interior and exterior, we're talking about in reference to the two intersected lines, right? So if I look, the angles that are inside the two intersected lines here would be angles 2, angle 3, angle 6, and angle 7. So those four angles are interior angles. All right, exterior angles, right? Exterior angles. So those would be on the outsides of the intersected lines. So that would be angles 1, angle 5, angle 4, and angle 8. All right, so we have the angles that are on the inside of the intersected lines. We have the angles that are on the exterior of the lines that are intersected. Okay, now when we think about alternate or same side of the transversal, right? So I'm going to put same side first, and then we're going to have alternate, which means opposite. All right, so opposite sides or alternate sides. All right, so that means on opposite sides. All right, so now when you look at, all right, our figure here, and we look at same side, right? So they're on the same side of the transversal. So like we did before, we have angle 1, 2, let me get my angle symbol in there, and angle 3 and 4. Those are all on the same side, right? 5, 6, 7, and 8, those are all on the same side. So all of those are same side angles, right? They're all on the same side. Now, when we talk about alternate, we typically talk about one versus the other. So we don't necessarily list like 4, but I would say like angle 1 and angle 8, right? Or alternate, right? Because they're on alternate sides, right? Angle 3 and angle 6, those are on alternate sides. They're on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, now if we take these two ideas and put them together, all right, we're going to create our first set of angle pairs, all right, that are formed when a transversal intersects, all right, two lines. All right, so jump down here, and I'm just going to highlight our transversal in green just to give us a little bit of a different color here. All right, and so what we do is if we combine these two ideas, same side interior, same side exterior, alternate interior, alternate exterior, we can be even more specific about what we, all right, are looking for. So same side interior and same side exterior. All right, and then we're going to have alternate interior, and we're going to have alternate exterior. All right, And once again, if you need more time to write, just pause the video, write, flip it back on. All right, so make sure you get all those down. Now, once again, the name tells us exactly what we're looking for. So we want them to be same side and interior. So notice there are two pairs here. So 2 and 3 would be same side interior. And we would also get angle 6 and angle 7. All right, so angle 6 and angle 7. So they're on the same side and they're both interior. Now, when we go to same side exterior, all right, so 1 and 4 are both on the same side and exterior. So both things in the name have to be true, angle 1 and angle 4. All right, and then when we look down here, we have angle 5 and angle 8. Okay, so those would be same side exterior. Now, let's go to alternate interior. So we want them to be interior, but we want them to be on opposite sides, all right, of our transversal. So notice 2 and 7 would be a pair of alternate interior angles. They're both inside, but they're on alternate or opposite sides of our transversal. And the same would be for angle 6 and angle 3. All right, alternate interior. Now, once again, alternate exterior. So we want them to be on the outside, but opposite sides of our transversal. So angle 1 and angle 8 would be alternate and exterior. Angle 4 and angle 5 would be alternate and exterior. All right, so that gets the majority of our angle pairs. We have one more angle pair relationship, but we will talk about that in class because we're already at that 15-16 minute mark in this video. All right, so remember, if you have any questions, some of this doesn't make sense, make sure you're starring that. All right, you have those questions ready. All right, and I will see you next time, and we'll talk about our last set of angles that are formed when we have a transversal and two lines. See ya.